evening. I'm Eileen Natoli, President of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Service District Board. We are here for our closed session. It is 6:33. I'm going to take roll call. Director Sheriff Watt.
Here.
Director Debbie.
Here.
And I understand that Director Hassai will join us at 7:30. I haven't heard about Director Madavi when he might join. Are there any public comments? There are no public comments, so we will adjourn to closed session. Thank you.
Their ability to do their job is being compromised by their being attacked mercilessly and having to defend themselves. And I speak specifically of Chief Harmon, because he was chief when my brother was killed, and I feel that he was so busy defending himself and being annihilated that it compromised his ability to lead the investigation in my brother's case. And, you know, I was very angry to get this in the mail because I just don't think that this is how we should be doing things. I think that,
You know, Kensington Police Protection Community Service District had nothing to do with
I understand that. I understand that. And so what I'm saying is that I hope that, you know, the elected people will recognize this for what it is and to whoever sent this out, I don't think this is how we should be doing things. And I really don't appreciate getting this in the mail.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments.
I would like to note that we still have a reward with any information about Miss Elliott's brother's death, Eric. Please contact Detective Martinez. It's a $15,000 reward for any information that anyone has.
Is Sylvia now online?
Yes.
Okay.
Director Hassai, are you here?
I am, but I would prefer to call back and do an audio-only line to preserve the bandwidth for the Wi-Fi. I'm not sure how.
Sure, that's fine. Okay. She will call us back.
Okay. All right. We have limited time, as I mentioned, with Director Hassai, so we have a few changes on the item under old business. President Stein has graciously agreed to postpone her matter until later in this meeting. While we're waiting for Director Hassai to call, I'd like to address Resolution 2019-05, which is concerning the assessment and levy for the Kensington Park Assessment District. I'm going to ask General Manager Constantouris to introduce this for us.
President Toya, we also had item 6, board and staff comments, and the consent calendar.
Well, the consent calendar I mentioned we'll do at the end of the meeting. Yeah.
So do you want to go right to item 8B?
Yes, because I'm concerned about Sylvia's time. 8B is the levy of the park.
The levy of the park is the annual process of approving resolutions for the park tax assessment. And it relates to the lighting, the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. There are a series of resolutions that are required by the board. The first three of which were approved at the April 25th meeting. The last resolution is before you tonight, and that one actually sets the assessment. The assessment last year was $17.24, and this year it would be $17.85. That would provide a balance of $40,212.70. We had to advertise a public hearing, which has been done and was published in the East Bay Times. So the recommendation tonight is to open the public hearing and receive comments, to close the public hearing and then adopt Resolution 2019-05, which sets this new assessment per dwelling unit.
Right, are there any public comments on the assessment? Okay. Hearing none, are there any board comments or questions on the park assessment?
I was actually just wondering why is one. I was just wondering why does one of them have all our signatures on and the other doesn't?
That was the one that was approved at the last meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
That resolution allowed us to post publicly that we were going to be having the assessment this evening.
And the one with our signatures needs our signatures tonight.
Awesome.
Okay. So I'm going to move that we adopt Resolution 2019-05, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District confirming the assessment and ordering the levy for the Kensington Park Assessment District for fiscal year 2019/20.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Director Madavi?
Aye.
Okay. Director Deppie?
Yes.
Vice President Hassai?
Aye.
Director Sheriswat?
Yes.
Okay. So and I'm voting yes, so the measure passes 5-0. Okay. The next item on the agenda, and before I overlook this anymore, we have Judith Propp with us tonight. Judith is with the Renee Sloan Law Firm, and she is here because our legal counsel, Ann Danforth, is away tonight. So welcome, Judith. Thank you very much. The next item on our calendar is concerning the execution and delivery of an installment sales agreement, and this is for the community center renovations. And this particular vehicle for the loan will save us $3,500. And I'm going to ask General Manager Constantouris to introduce this item as well.
Yes, President Natoli, and as you indicated, the main purpose of this item is it's an opportunity to save $3,500. It's something that the board has already approved in March of this year for a $250,000 amount, except this is an installment sale. This is a financial arrangement. By changing it to this particular financial vehicle, the district saves approximately $3,500. And Bill Zanoni is here who can answer any technical questions that you may have. It can be a little confusing when these are the titles of these, because when it's a property lease or installment sale, it sounds confusing. It really is a loan. It's funded under these agreements, and the district saves $3,500. Now, in addition to that, we're presenting the district the option of increasing the loan by $50,000 to $300,000 if the board would like to consider that. It's at the same 3.8% interest rate. The interest for 10 years under the $250,000 is $30,516, and for the $300,000, the annual cost is a little more than $6,000 a year more. So if we presented this also not knowing the results of the surety bond with the, since the bidder went out of business, the low bidder for the community center, but we have made progress with the surety bond, and it looks like we're close to coming to some agreement, and that will more than make up this $50,000 if the board wants to stick to the original terms of $250,000.
Are there any public comments concerning the installment sale and agreement? Are there any board comments?
I would like to thank Bill and Tony for processing this. We discussed the budget for the capital improvement of the community center on Tuesday at the Finance Committee meeting. Mr. Zanoni has since updated our funding requirements, and I wish I could share those with all of you right now, but you will see them on our adopted budget. And since the need has decreased so greatly to what we thought we were, not short on funding, but not currently budgeted into our into the capital account, the separate capital account we have for renovation. I'm very comfortable with passing resolution 2019-07 and sticking with the original $250,000.
I'm just a bit confused. Am I reading the same capital projects page 19 of the budget?
Yes, but you might go closer so you might want this one should be. What I just was mentioning to Director Madavi is if you do have a full copy of the agenda packet on page 19 of the draft budget, there is a figure of additional funding required. In the version that was printed, it was $370,308, but it turns out that there was a calculation error. The correct number should be $133,489. That's on page 19 of the budget. So again, the number at the very bottom should be $133,489.
And yet that figure does not reflect either the Measure WW grant or the surety bond.
Correct. And
So
the Measure WW will be $158,000, and we don't know yet what we'll get back from the surety, but it will be some positive number. So
he's right behind you.
okay. I believe that it does include the one that you talked about. You said it was coming.
All right.
All right. So, are there any other board comments on the resolution? Hearing none, I agree with Director Sheriff Swat and believe that the original loan amount of $250,000 is the appropriate amount. And so I will move to adopt the resolution 2019-07. I just want to make sure it's got the $250,000. Yeah, in the front. Okay, this is a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an installment sale agreement and authorizing and directing certain actions in connection with the acquisition and construction of a community center remodeling project. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I would like to second that.
Oh, okay. I will let Sylvia second.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to take roll call. Director Madavi?
Present.
Okay. Director Sheriff Swat?
Oh, yes.
Vice President Usai?
Yes.
Director Debbie? Okay, and I will also vote yes, so the measure passes 4-0. And then we go to item B, which is the draft policy and procedure manual, updated drafts of sections 3,000 and 4,000, along with the resolution. General Manager Concentrados, could you introduce this for us, please?
Yes, President Toy, these policies were presented at the last board meeting on April 25th. And the board did request a few changes to policy 4,000, which have been included in the draft that's presented this evening. The draft of 3,000 contains a few changes, but they were relatively insignificant. They were typographical and grammatical errors. They were not content errors. And there was a clarification on one of the sections where the language was just corrected to say exactly what was meant. So just a language correction. And there were some minor wording changes and some cross-references that needed updating. And with those, there was no substantive changes to that draft. And none of these are so substantial that they require a new initial consideration of these policies, as stated in the existing policy 1010. The one thing that could be confusing is that since we are using the Special District Association model policy manual, the numbering system is different. So we have to make some changes to the numbering temporarily, since it overlaps with some of the current numbers. And then when we finish the entire policy manual, we'll go back and again adjust the numbers. The board can consider this item and adopt the resolution. It does require a 4/5 vote of the board. And the resolution is included, and it identifies exactly what the numbering changes would be, which are, it's to repeal the existing sections 4,000 to 5,000, renumber the existing section 3,000 as 5,000, and adopt the new sections 3,000 and 4,000. So it can be a little confusing, but it's, that would complete the adoption of these two sections. And General Counsel Ann Danforth has reviewed this and prepared these changes, and is not in the country today. So,
Lucky her.
And also, Director Mondavi has also had some changes that he had asked that be included in the agenda packet. I think he's distributed some of those.
Those are for 4,000. The small little quick submission was, it's a lot to go through, you know, in a short period of time. So I've also been doing some research on 3,000. That one's a bit more involved, but those are probably worth reading. It's the single sheet back and forth. There's a bunch back there. I'm sorry about that. Just like when everything is so front-loaded, this is what happens.
So, ma'am, you have a handout?
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
Okay, I can. So the general points of...
Speak into the microphone. Hold it closer. More than that.
So the general points really are emphasizing is that there is some lack of consistency across this section, which, you know, is not a good thing from a litigation or labor point if you have anything where there's an inconsistency. And also, generally, you want to avoid over-promising in something you detail out explicitly. For example, in the very beginning, the section on at will, which, for complete disclosure, I do not like the concept of at will, but just if we're trying to be tight with our language, you forget the and with no warning, which is a major part, because at will is anytime, any reason, no warning. And there's some other small things. For example, like there's a typo in the re-edited bullet point number 24 for section 3110.1. Like when you went and edited, you created a new typo error. And then really, for example, we don't have a satellite office, so that's sort of strange. And when you talk about section 3150.5 and about the idea of overtime pay, it is not complete because the Department of Industrial Relations, I'm not trying to shout, it's just this microphone. The Department of Industrial Relations actually has a bunch of other details associated with overtime that are not included, and in general, it's just better to reference out the printed copy of the official rules. And then really there's a bunch of other small things, and then I guess the really big one is, I was not aware that the district had a comprehensive drug-free awareness program that we developed ourselves, and that we had essentially some sort of ongoing educational effort. So do we?
So what section are you?
Section 3220.4.2.
Which section again, please?
Section 3220.4.2.
I think we're recommending that this be adopted.
Well, if you adopt it and you don't have the program, suddenly you're out of compliance with your own manual.
Well, which as part of this to develop a program.
But you say we have developed, past tense.
I believe in conjunction with SDRMA, there is a drug awareness and development program.
But it's not developed by the district.
I think the district has adopted it. If we want to make some modifications to it,
We're able to do
relates
so.
specifically to the district. I think that's the difference.
Well, I guess then I should also ask, and then section 3170.2, when we talk about all this transfer to satellite location or secondary offices, we don't have anything like that, and we're neither as a district large enough, nor have the capital even just by operating from more than one location. So,
Not necessarily. Should we have to move outside of the district office for any time? I can see your reasoning that you might think it's extra. I at first thought, do we need that section? But then considering the fact that there may be renovations going on to the public safety building, we may have to, we're temporarily having to be here for board meetings. I thought it was prudent that we just leave that in.
but you see, the thing about that is, you're saying that employees can request a transfer after 6 months to these second locations. And so this is not about us being in temporary housing. This is about saying employees can go and work at this other place, which we do not have.
Well, this section was prepared by a personnel human resources attorney and reflects current human resources law, as was indicated in the last meeting, and tries to anticipate possible changes in the future. I think there is the possibility of having more than one location. It's a good safety practice in the future, and also saving records on the site. I think that Director Medalli raised that is a good idea in the future. So in case there's a catastrophe, there's a second location for all the records of the district. So although not everything has been implemented, these are things that probably we should have in the future.
A record storage like a locker off at the county is different than having a facility we own and people can go work at, just for the record.
Well, we don't necessarily have to own it, we could lease it.
Well, I guess my point is, like, you also are over-promising. Are we going to be able to follow these religiously to the rule and never deviate? Because any deviation essentially sets you up for litigation issues.
Well, actually, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have policies stated if the law already stipulates that that we're out of compliance with some action. We would be found against whether or not they were in our policy and procedure manual.
Well, I mean, like things like you promising you're going to vet or like do, what was the word? The reviews of employees every 3, 6, 9, 12 months and so forth.
I think it was 3 months, then hopefully it's 6 months, and then every year thereafter.
Yeah, but I'm saying that the point is that it has to be kept,
Of course, yeah, that's right. May I ask Judith a question? There were in section 3000, there were two very minor type drop letters. Would it make more sense to put those in tonight, or would it make, we have, any adopted policy and procedure needs to be formatted? Would it make more sense at that time when formatting is done to make changes?
If you already know that there are typos and you want those reflected in the final version, whoever makes the motion could incorporate those changes into your motion tonight.
Thank you.
One thing to note, as General Manager Constantouris pointed out, the current manual is very deficient. And I don't want the perfect to do in the good. We really need something now. Definitely there's going to be cleanup needed, we understand that. Some proposed changes as we were doing some of the drafting we didn't get in. We do need to do this, but right now our current manual is so out of date and so deficient that this will be a significant improvement. We definitely will plan to make amendments and make changes and take into consideration the points that you've raised, Director Madawi, but I think overall this is a significant improvement over the existing policy and procedure manual.
And should it be passed, then we would also know that it had been adopted by the board, where we do not know that about our current manual,
Right.
pieces of our current manual.
Right. So are there any public comments on the
days back. One general comment, I think maybe last time, we'll make it again, that the chief of police not be part of this manual. Chief of police will presumably, as an at-will employee, have a separate contract as the interim chief of police does now. And things like sick leave accrual, vacation accrual, right now it's all tied to the MOU of the police officers. If the sick leave accrual and the holiday benefits, for example, are as it's described in the manual here, then the chief of police will get less sick leave, less holidays than the officers that they're overseeing. Personally, I don't think that makes sense, and it's not general practice.
Well, let me just say that at the very beginning, it says these personnel policies, rules, and regulations hereinafter referred to as the rules are applicable to the chief of police and all non-sworn employees of the district and the chief of police.
Or it's a redundancy.
Yeah, it is. Well, we can make that correction right now, too.
But my suggestion is that you don't apply it to the chief of police, because the chief of police is going to have a separate contract. You can cross-reference within that contract all the elements of the policy manual that you want to apply to the chief of police. And then the rest of the benefits, if you will, such as sick leave, such as vacation, such as holiday, disability, and so forth, which are presently part of the police officer's MOU as a cross-reference, will no longer be applicable to the chief of police. The chief of police will actually be getting less in the way of benefits than the interim chief of police is now, and the officers will be getting better benefits than the chief of police will be if this policy manual applies to them. So that just
I believe that the MOU would override any policy and procedure. An individual MOU with the chief of police would be the
well, why would you
mitigating document.
I think what your point that you're making makes sense. But
I mean,
I
it makes
believe, because the point is that the chief of police is a sworn employee, but also an at-will employee, which is different than the KPD itself, the individual officers. So therefore, there are some things,
well, there are a number of issues like sexual harassment, all those things. You can cross-reference those in a contract with the chief of police, as opposed to putting the chief of police in here and creating a problem with regard to some of these benefits. To me, it's a lot simpler to do it that way than to put the chief of police in here to begin with. Secondly, you are creating also a captain's position. Captain's position will be outside of the MOU.
Right.
It will be an exempt position. That will have to go in here, presumably. Or you create a contract for the captain as well. So you have to make that decision. And under those circumstances, if you put the captain in here, then he will be getting less benefits than the officers who he presumably oversees as the captain. So again, to me, it makes no sense to do that at all. Finally, I would mention in section 3200, you talk about sick leave, vacation, and holidays, I believe. There is no discussion at all about vacation. So in essence, the employees who are covered by this will get no vacation accrual present because it's silent. So anyways, I mean, that's my recommendation. Take it for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I had one question that came up when I was skimming this. This is for the rest of the board, if I may. So there's a line that says, in its sole discretion, district management may determine what's in the best interests of the district. Would you be, section 3000, the preamble. Given how much you talked about, we've come through a certain era or whatever, would you feel comfortable if, say, Kevin Hart or Greg Harmon had recommended and gone with that?
Well, this is in reference to the employees of the district, because what is happening is that we're acknowledging that the general manager has purview over the non-sworn employees. So that is the reference.
But Kevin Hart was also general manager. Remember? General manager / chief of police, and he is technically a person who is qualified to be a general manager. Would you be comfortable if we were to hire him and that would be the terms under which he operated?
Well, we would allow him,
This doesn't seem germane to the conversation.
Yes,
It is. It's about laws. You make laws and policies that go beyond the current board or the current people in those roles. You create laws that pertain to the future too. So you cannot create laws that you are comfortable with now and then say, oh, in the future we are not comfortable with it.
well, no, actually, you can make changes to P&P manual, but,
Director Hassai wanted to
oh,
say
sorry,
something.
what do you want to state?
All I wanted to say is if from my point of view and my perspective, this is not a blow in the wind type of document. If I vote for this, it's not because I voted for it based on some circumstance. I think this is the best way for the district going forward, regardless of who's in the position. That's my own personal answer to your question.
Okay. I think I'm getting my point.
Yes. So I'm
Your
understanding.
microphone's not on.
Can't hear you.
Hello? Okay. So I'm understanding that with these new policies that the non-sworn employees can be fired at will for any or no reason by the general manager without review. That's what I'm understanding from this?
They were, according to Jim Croft can say, but according to Ann Danforth, our employees were always at will.
Okay, so that's what it's saying, that
Yes.
the general manager can hire and fire the non...
That our employees and our general manager and chief of police are all at-will employees.
So the general manager can fire the chief of police
Yes.
and any of the officers?
No. They are not, they are sworn officers.
I see, so that's a whole different...
Yes.
I see, okay. Well, I'm very concerned about this policy, and I'm carrying a concern for employees treated fairly and with respect, that many of us are or were working people, and we need to have unity. At a Matrix meeting, Lynn Walter, who is both an employee and a citizen of Kensington, spoke up about the need for counting the high cost, millions of dollars of paying CalPERS for unfunded pension and benefit liabilities should the district choose to contract out for police services. Many citizens appreciated Lynn bringing these facts. At the March 2nd Matrix meeting, Officer Ted Foley, representing the Kensington Police Officers Association, also brought valuable information about night shift activities and some shortcomings of the Alcida Police Department and some questions about the Matrix report. Many of the public present were grateful. Officer Foley was then publicly bullied at that meeting by the general manager, Constantoros, in an attempt to silence him. Constantoros, I heard him say he shouldn't say that. To treat a police officer so disrespectfully undermines the police and the rule of law. Lynn Walter was similarly censored privately by the general manager. They were both told not to speak to the Kensingtonians who hire them and whom they serve. They were, in effect, told not to do their jobs by the general manager. The general manager, in trying to silence the employees, is, in my opinion, violating their civil rights. He is also depriving Kensington citizens of the right to know a fuller picture of what is going on. This censorship and bullying does not just harm the employees, but also we citizens who are, in effect, made the enemy to be manipulated and shut out of information. General Manager Constantoris has exhibited this shutting out of information in a number of other ways that I don't have time to go into right now. But I'm chilled by this authoritarian stance of the general manager, and I don't feel that this is a good policy of having the general manager firing employees at will for any and no reason. I think it would be much better to have some sort of hearing process, possibly to go before the board, and that also there should be a reason. I don't see, you've listed lots of prohibited conduct in the next section, which you could say you could, fire people for any of these reasons, but to say you're going to fire people for no reason is, kind of just not fair. I feel that the employees are stakeholders in Kensington running well, just as much as the citizens, including the board members. We're a liberal community, 78% or so Democrats, who generally support equality and fair treatment of people. Let us give the employees a good deal and not censor or bully them. Let the citizens be fully informed of all the facts. And let us not have a single person deciding to fire people at will for any or no reason.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments?
Hello, I'm Andrew Reed. I would like to thank the board and Tony for getting this manual up and running. I'm just speaking about Section 3000. I would urge that we do listen to this concept of being a bit more conservative. I understand the need to get this thing going. You want to do that, but I have a thought to share with you. I do think, I took some time, I looked at this, I've done quite a few of these with counsel for clients, and there really is something to this idea of don't overpromise, over-deliver, and be too specific. You've done a pretty good job here. I would suggest the default be take out some of these questionable sections, the ones that are clearly wrong. Take out anything that you think there's a chance that you may not be able to comply with. You guys are all very busy. You have a lot on your plate. For example, if in the next several months you don't comply with performance planning and review policies or grievance policy or something like that, it would be better for you to adopt this without these items and make the default that you can come back. It's more likely that you will come back with the corrections in a few months. I think if you do it this way, why set yourself up unnecessarily with risk You're trying to do a good deed here. Don't be punished for a good deed. What would it take in terms of time to scrub this? Is it a 1-month delay? Council?
It's 2 readings.
Yeah, 2 meetings, so
Two readings.
1 month delay.
How many have you done?
We've done a meeting in May, was it May? Yeah. No, in April, at the end of April, we did the first reading. This would be the second reading. That in theory, we could approve it tonight because the changes have been non-substantive from the first reading. If we went and did a more significant cleanup, that would be a substantive change which would require a first reading and then a second reading.
I guess you have to ask yourselves what level of risk you're facing. In my opinion, if this takes you another 2 months to do, it's human nature. How busy are you going to be? You've got youth caught, you've got personal issues, you've got a lot of stuff here. Look into your hearts and minds and ask yourselves, if we adopt this, what's the likelihood that we're going to go fix overtime, really do performance review, implement the drug program, correct, integrate the at-will language better throughout the handbook? What are the odds of you doing that in a timely fashion? Time will pass quickly, you'll be distracted. One day there'll be an issue, especially if you think that any current employees will litigate and this handbook's in place. I would urge you to enjoy the progress you've made, take the extra step, clean it up a little bit, come back, do it twice, and then you won't have to think about this again. You'll be free to do more important things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Johanna Furman. I haven't had a chance to look at the revisions. I do understand that it's taken an awful lot of time and energy, and I would certainly ditto what Andrew has said. I would also say that from a transparency standpoint and engaging the community around this, if there were an opportunity over this period of time to have one or more people do a further analysis of where the changes are, since this is a governance issue, this is really going to represent the new guidelines by which the department is going to be managed. And I think that you would have a lot more of a sense that people are on board or we're getting their input on it, rather than very kind of fragmented. And I think that piece is unfortunate because you have spent an enormous amount of time, and I do understand that there are a couple of folks who had a couple of days to go over what is just a massive amount of material. So that's my hope, that as a resident now, that you would engage us by doing a little bit more education and summarizing, having someone summarize what the substantive changes are going to be. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So I've been working on improving the policy and procedures manual for the last 4 years. And I appreciate everyone's comments. I do believe the substantive changes are summarized in the 4-page, 5-page staff report prepared by Ann Danforth. Section 3000 was prepared by an employment lawyer who specializes in HR. So we do definitely have some clarifications and some formatting problems with this document, which we understood because we wanted to bring in pieces not as quickly as we could, as we've been working on this directly for over a year now. Other incarnations came before in the previous 3 years. But this is such a step forward for the district and something which I feel confident that we can and should adhere to. It's important to do employee evaluation. It's important that we agree to and alert everyone about sexual harassment and ethics training. So therefore, I will make a motion that the board approve resolution number 2019-06, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, repealing the current policies 4000 and 5000, renumbering policy 3000 and adopting new policies 3000 and 4000, with the addendum, that policy 3000-110.1, number 24, the letter D is added to observe. Policy 3110.2, the letter R is added to general manage. That policy 4110.6.1, we add in item on before the second the there, and that to policy 3000.1, we end the sentence at the word district and cut out and the chief of police, the second one.
Time out on that for a moment. So you're just...
I'm looking for a second, and then we can discuss. Would anyone like a second?
I will second the motion, but I will also ask that we commit to doing a cleanup of this so that we present sections that need to be removed or cleaned up at our June 13th meeting. Because I think the comments that were made were very good comments, but we are in great need of having a policy and procedure manual that at least comes much closer to complying with law than our current manual.
I concur on the addendum to the motion.
May I now discuss this?
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and adopt also 4000, which has language contradictory to the Brown Act and also contradictory to the parliamentary rules you cite, and also is contradictory to the staff report itself.
In what way is it contradictory to the staff?
Staff report says that there is, within the policies there is a way for citizens and public to add things to the agenda. Nowhere in that section is there any mention of the public.
I believe the staff report,
It's item 2D on page 4. There was a reason I went through this with fine.
Well, they're always welcome. I mean, the general manager stated it's always welcome that citizens email and suggest that items for the agenda.
And you also want to then put in languages directly contradictory to the Brown Act.
Well, as you're not an attorney, with all due respect, I'm going to take the opinion of our general counsel.
it's not.
If we find that I'm incorrect, then I'm very happy to vote for an addendum in the future, or change in the future.
Could I don't think it's, we would probably need a little more time than 2 weeks to go through this and make the changes. Maybe a few months because there's some really good points raised by the speakers, and potentially, I don't know, can't review Director Madavi's comments too, but it would be good if we had 3 or 4 months to have an opportunity to review this material and then come back and report to the board at that time. I don't think that the staff can do this by the next meeting.
Would you amend your addendum to the motion to make it for July or August? When we do formatting? Okay, and I will second that addendum to that motion.
You're raising your hand back.
So you'll need to come to the microphone. Sorry.
Yes? Yeah, let me hook up to Mike. Go ahead, Chris.
I look forward to coming back and looking at changes, but I don't think there should be any comment about implementing any of the recommendations anybody made, how they're good or bad. And I think just because we're coming and looking and considering them, you have to realize we're not, in a sense, promising to make those changes.
Right, but consider them and make a decision.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
consider them, but
Yeah.
there's no problem with that.
Right.
I thank you for letting me come back up. With all due respect to the general manager, when I was very busy, he just proved the point that I was trying to make. That once this thing launches, even if it had direct attention, he's saying it would take 3 or 4 months. I fail to understand if you waited 4 years and you have a total of 2.5 employees instead of 100. I don't understand what the bomb's rush is to get this thing right. And the director and the GM have just said there are substantive, credible comments being made. So, and before you answer me, I would also like to say something about attorneys. I've met lots of wonderful, competent attorneys, and usually they're right and they're very good, but they're human. And this document, Section 3000, is clearly a template that the law firm has, and they modified it to some extent for our district. With all due respect to the firm, I have seen more accurate, better work that's more customized for the client. This is not in your best interests. If you adopt it tonight, you should make a much faster effort to make these corrections. I don't think thinking 3 or 4 months than having it go 6 or 7 or 8. I'm not trying to insult anyone's initiative, but we're all human. And why not be a little conservative here and do this the correct way? Thank you.
Judith, do you have any comments on this?
Could I request that we vote on the motion that I put on the table?
You're calling the question?
No, I'm asking the president if yes, if she would call the question.
Just because there's been so much discussion, it might be helpful to restate
Okay,
the motion.
then I'll make the motion again.
Not make the new motion or make it again, just restate so that everybody's clear what they're considering.
I would say, though, I think that we could ask the attorney that reviewed this to take the comments that we heard at this meeting and come up with a new draft on 3,000. And I would think it would be...
Okay.
You're
welcome to make that motion.
Well, I was saying that we could do, get corrections, I would hope, by June 13th.
Okay. Well, I'm going to restate my motion that I move that the board approve Resolution 2019-06, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, repealing the current policies 4,000 and 5,000, renumbering policy 3,000, and adopting new policies 3,000 and 4,000. I added fixed several typos, and then we requested that the general manager take a look at suggestions made this evening. Should any of the policies be at cross purposes, and bring those for consideration before the board sometime before September 1st.
And that I seconded that motion, so I will call for a vote right now. Let's see, that's resolution. Director Madawi,
May I make a quick comment?
we're in the process of voting.
Afterward?
You can make a comment afterwards.
Thank you. No.
Okay. Director Debbie?
Yes,
Vice President Desai?
Yes.
Director Sharaswat?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes, but I really am committed to cleaning up the provisions, and I do think we can get this done within 2 months. And I think that we can ask the attorney to go through 3,000, and that should be done pretty quickly.
May I comment?
Okay, so the motion passes 4-0.
4-1.
4-1, sorry.
So I will just say this: what you've done is A, incredibly reckless, and B, imagine if this had been Linda Lipscomb's board who had done the exact same thing and ran through their manual.
Well, I will absolutely disagree. I sat here 4 years ago, 4+ years ago, what are we in, 2019? No, I'm sorry, 5 years ago, and listened as they debated changes in the policy and procedure manual. The board at the time worked very diligently, had a committee. They worked for 1.5 years, and with all due respect to the people that were working on it, I attended meetings where they debated and of, and couldn't decide, and then nothing was done at meeting after meeting. So we've moved forward. I'm incredibly proud of the fact that we will begin to be in compliance, that employees can read what is occurring and move forward.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda will be
Question, who is this HR attorney that is doing this? Is this Bob Dice?
The question is who the HR attorney is and what firm, I guess, which firm is this?
Genevieve.
Genevieve was Rennie Sloan and Sakai. She appeared last month at our meeting. And
Works with Bob Dice.
No.
Yes, she's on the same bills with him. Just let's be completely transparent about that.
Well, that's fine. It's good. No problem.
Comment, please, since you brought up my name.
Hi, Linda Lipscomb here.
Actually, Director Mondavi brought up here.
Oh, okay, somebody did. We worked really hard to get the policy. We shouldn't be as at odds as we are, but we also should be doing it right. When we got this policy, I got up here at the last meeting and I said it was what we got was unintelligible, and it was. It was so bad that President Natoli and I went line by line. First, we worked on it individually for hours, trying to make sure it had subjects and verbs. I put many comments on questioning whether particular provisions were legal or not, whether you can just fire somebody. Let's say you fire them for an unlawful reason, and so a statement was added for any lawful reason or something to this effect. But as a whole, it is a very lengthy piece. It should be reviewed. Had I been the attorney who brought this to this body, I would have been ashamed. It was that poorly written and gave rise to that many questions of a legal character. I would be very surprised if we were going to pay the full fee for the production of that, because it was put together from a couple of prefabs, and believe me, it was so repetitive. In some places you knew it had been taken from a corporate manual, other places from an agency manual, maybe a little bit of CSDA thrown in there. And I mean, President Natoli and I spent at least 8 hours apiece on this thing, just line by line, not questioning all of these substantive underpinnings and researching, because I'm not an employment law lawyer. But this deserves a little bit more time. I thought President Natoli was making a good point, and well, maybe we should, put the brakes a little bit on this. We don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and that's true. But we have to put some brakes on this. It is not a well-crafted document, and there are questions about it. So I would hold off, do a little more research, rather than adopting it at that time. I'm mindful of the fact that you've already taken the vote, but since you brought my name up, I thought I'd give you my 2 cents.
Thanks, Ms. Sure. The request from the Kensington Fire Protection District.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for placing the Kensington Fire Protection District on your agenda tonight. The Fire District Board has authorized the Board President to submit a formal request to your district, which I will introduce and submit tonight. I believe this item was placed under old business to reflect that the members of the KFPD Building Committee, Vice President Don Dahmer and Director Larry Nagel, addressed this board on March 28, 2019. Directors Dahmer and Nagel presented the updated public safety building site selection process. They provided an overview of 2 alternatives to address the challenge facing both of our districts with the existing building. Not only is the existing building obsolete and in need of repair, it would not withstand a Richter scale 7 earthquake, which would result in loss of life for those occupying the building and result in the building being unserviceable in the wake of such a disaster. The 2 alternatives under evaluation by the Fire Protection District are retrofit and renovate the existing building and construct a new building, most likely in the Kensington Park. Renovating the existing building would be significantly less costly, but would also give rise to significant trade-offs that must be brought before the Kensington community. Given the necessary code upgrades involved with such a comprehensive renovation, including upgrades in ADA compliance, the fire department may need the entire building, thereby displacing all or part of the community service district personnel in such a renovation. Both districts, in that case, fire and community service, would be required to relocate during the renovation. The site on the Arlington and El Cerrito that was occupied during the last renovation is no longer available. We need to carefully evaluate where these essential services could be located during a renovation and assess the impact of such a relocation on the state of emergency preparedness in Kensington during that period. We recognize that there are obstacles to constructing a new building in Kensington Park, including opposition from some members of the community. We have also found that some residents who had previously opposed a new building in the park have become more open-minded in the wake of the deadly fires in Paradise. Aligned with investigating both options for community input, Director Dahmer and Director Nagel informed your board on March 28th that the fire district needs to have a reliable legal opinion as to whether any site in the Kensington Park can be developed for the construction of a new public safety building that would be occupied by both districts. On March 28th, President Natoli informed me that the Community Service District could take action on such a request only after being presented with a formal request from the Fire Protection District. Therefore, I have asked to be placed on your agenda tonight to read the following letter sent to your district on behalf of the Kensington Fire Protection District. And this letter is in the packet, dated May 15th. Dear President Natoli, at its regular meeting on May 8th, 2019, the Board of Directors of the Kensington Fire Protection District discussed strategies to continue with and finalize its analyses of viable alternatives to A, seismically upgrade and renovate, or B, build a new public safety building for Kensington. The public safety building at 217 Arlington Avenue presently houses all personnel and equipment for the KFPD and the KPPCSD. As authorized by the KFPD Board on May 8, 2019, I am writing to request that the KPPCSD obtain a legal opinion addressing whether KPPCSD is prohibited by bond covenants, grant restrictions, or otherwise from allowing the development of a new public safety building within Kensington Park. The KFPD is prepared to enter into an agreement with the KPPCSD to pay 50% of the costs of such an opinion, up to $5,000 for each district, as long as the opinion is delivered to the Kensington Fire Protection District within 60 days from May 8th, 2019. In addition to authorizing this request for the above referenced legal opinion, the KFPD board also moved to begin planning a public forum to educate the public on the status of the public safety building and seek community input on its future. We anticipate that the public forum will be held in the fall of 2019, and we invite the KPPCSD to participate with the KFPD board in this community event. I hope that the KPPCSD board will look favorably on this request to obtain a timely legal opinion in the interest of assuring the public that we have carefully investigated the alternatives for the future of the public safety building. Please do not hesitate to contact me or any member of the Fire Protection District Board if you have any questions.
Thank you. I actually have a quick question. It was just like, so when you say the legal opinion gets delivered to you guys, you also get a copy, right?
Oh, I would assume
Yeah,
so.
I know. Just, just the semantics.
Because we're asking your district to seek the opinion.
One thing that we discussed when we met last month was a site analysis, because when Vice President Dahmer made his presentation to our district, there were a lot of community members that discussed alternate sites, like Summit Reservoir, San Pablo Filtration Plant, the triangular property that would be on Calusa and Fairmount. And we suggested that the fire district do an updated site analysis. What's the status of that site analysis?
So also at our meeting on May 8th, Director Dahmer and Director Nagel presented 2 decision pathways for each of the 2 alternatives and what would be entailed in the investigation of each of the alternatives. So, partly updating the site analysis for the existing site in light of the fact that the new fault was discovered behind the building. That requires an update to learn how and in what way the specifications for the building might change for the seismic upgrading, given the knowledge now of the existence of that fault. But, I am not an expert in all of these matters, but I can tell you that from the discussions I've participated in, some of the factors that you raised, like the various sites, the reservoir, or the site down by the former St. Jerome, I'm not sure that a site analysis is actually the answer, rather a clear statement of the criteria that go into making the decision about where such a building could be located. So the one that immediately comes to mind in response to many of the suggestions that have been made, those suggestions having been vetted by the fire chief, the response that we've gotten is that the response time for those locations would not qualify those locations for the location of the new building. So I'm not sure that that's a site analysis matter as much as clearly articulating the criteria for selecting the site.
Well, the site in the park would be further away from many homes in Kensington than the current site. So I do urge you, though, to have a site analysis where you present to the community, because at our meeting, we had residents raise these other sites. As we also talked about, this may raise a CEQA issue. Putting the building in the park may raise CEQA issues. Also, there's potential zoning issues. And now, with respect to this proposal that you're suggesting, do you know that you can get an opinion for $10,000?
That was an estimate by a member of our board who is an attorney. So we don't know, and we discussed that at our meeting. And so we expect that, if it's determined that that's not sufficient, you could give us feedback, you could make a counter proposal, but we just really want to get this rolling.
Well, at the present time, as you heard earlier, we're pretty swamped. Our attorney has suggested that actually the fire district gets the opinion and indemnify our district. So that's another way to attend, because I don't know if it's even feasible to get an opinion within 60 days of May 8th.
So, I'm glad that you brought that up. Again, I'm just speaking for myself, not on behalf of the board, but I can tell you that at least a good year ago, a member of the Fire Protection Board, this was before I was on the board, had actually brought that idea to the Fire Protection District Board, that the fire board itself obtained the legal opinion. And there was a lot of angst and pushback about that, and comment that we can't obtain the opinion because we don't own the land. But, certainly if you'd like to make a counter proposal, we will really welcome the engagement and moving this forward productively.
May I have a comment? Sure. So also the point is, we also share that building. We live in it too, and it's in a way our sort of a joint asset. We pay lease to it. But also, if you think about it this way, the fact that we are allowed to be in that building saves this district massive capital costs. So to continue that joint relationship is in the taxpayer's best interest. And to try to say it's all the fire board's problem and not ours is sort of punting off the more philosophical point that as a board and as a district we work for the community, and it's in the community's best interest that we work together with the fire board.
I totally agree that we need to work together. We're one community. I totally agree with that. We're swamped, Director Mandavi, and that's why I'm suggesting that we have take up the suggestion of our attorney to have the fire district get the opinion, because I'm not sure that we can deliver anything by 60 days from May 8th. Our attorney is out of town right now, and we'll be back.
Well, we wouldn't want to use our attorney, because at least from everything I've heard is you want a bond attorney.
We do want a bond attorney, but we need the selection of the bond attorney.
Well, isn't that also why we maintain relations with PLG, in fact? Like the fact that Volksman's coming to sit in on some of the meetings, so it's not like we're attorney-less. And, would 60 days be negotiable if it would take the attorney longer, just so we,
So as the minutes of our meeting are not out yet, but the flavor and the nature of the discussion was, if the cost of this exceeded $10,000, we could have an iterative process or a dialogue about that, and then I think similarly, if 60 days wasn't quite the right amount of time, we could work on that too. I think the fear is that this will languish, and I know that the discussion of obtaining a legal opinion has been going on for perhaps 2 full years now, and so we're just really aiming for this public forum in the fall, and we really don't want to present to the public options that can be ruled out. I think, as you know, we looked at obtaining a seismic report to see if that was an option that would either be a yes or no for that site, and the estimate was far more than we imagined. It was $70,000. So the legal opinion would need to be obtained anyway, even if the seismic report was positive, so it seemed the more cost-effective way to go for the taxpayers.
Yeah, I'm just very concerned about the public opposition to the park, because I get a lot of comments that really resist that, but I appreciate that there's very limited spots within Kensington, and that is a challenge that we face. May I?
Okay.
Yes.
So, Director Debbie, please jump in if you want to. Director Debbie and I are the ad hoc committee dealing with the public safety building, and we've been in discussions with Director Nagel and Vice President Donner. Is it Vice President Donner? Excuse me. And we have moved. We also suggest that there be a public forum in the fall where we can discuss the options. But I believe that Director Debbie and I are feeling that currently going for the legal opinion is not in the best interest of this board at this time. It doesn't mean that in the near future it won't be. But the reasoning is twofold. One, there's two parts to getting a decision. Our attorney, Ann Danforth, General Counsel, has looked at the bond and said it's really inconclusive. She feels that it's probable that it will be inconclusive, perhaps even to a bond attorney, but that's not necessarily the finding. So we could have a finding of yes, for the bond attorney could say, yes, you're welcome to build a fire station in Kensington Park. Then there has to become the question, is it the will of this board and the will of the fire board to create such a building? So there's a two-pronged process there. Director Debbie and I feel that we need more information and to read the site analysis in more detail so that we're able to communicate well and clearly to our board and to residents why we would suggest one alternative over another. And because we're not there yet, and we hope to be, we're going to put a lot of work into it this summer, but we think that a finding at this time and with the time restriction is not helpful.
I just wanted to clarify that the question about building in the park is not about building simply a fire station. If the fire district was concerned only with building and maintaining a fire station, then I think we would be able to renovate where we are right now. The primary reason that we're considering the park is to be able to include the community services district, the police department, have full parking for all the officers, have space for all of your staff. So that's the motivating factor.
No, absolutely. But the fact is that the drawings as they exist are priced out at $12 million, which is well beyond the budget of the Fire Protection District and well beyond the budget of this board and this district at this time. So it is not something that we can walk into lightly or without consideration. And we may have to consider all options. We just want to be able to do that in a timely manner. And we're certainly not shutting down the possibility of having a legal opinion in the future, in the near future. It's just that we feel, Director Debbie, speak for you, but myself, we felt that right now this was not in the best interest of the board, our board.
Chris, do you have any comments?
I feel that the agility that Michelle Phelps was cutting up, and I believe that Michelle captured our feelings, and it doesn't seem to make sense right now. There's too much ambiguity about the project. I've got a number of things I could say about it, but I think it's probably said well. I do have a question for Julie. Has the fire district ever taken an official position that putting that building apart is their desired solution?
He asked if the fire district had taken a position that an official position, a board decision, in other words, that placing the building in the park is the preferred alternative.
Absolutely not. As I said at the KPOA meeting, the only official decision that the fire board has made is that we're launching a decision-making process to put a very structured approach in place to evaluate the viable alternatives that exist for Kensington. And it's very difficult for us to even make such a decision without knowing or having an indication from the Community Services District whether your district wants to be in the same building with the Fire Protection District. You know, we hear informally, we hear yes, we hear no, from all different sources, but it's all informal, and we haven't had a public discussion where we've been able to learn what the will of the Community Services District is.
My answer would be, of course, that we would like to consider an ongoing relationship. We think it's prudent for public safety. There is some concern about the latter half of your remark. I know that while Director Deppie and I have been meeting, I know that with Director Nagel and Vice President Dahmer, other board members have been having discussions about the building of the public safety building, and I think it was both Director Deppie and my concern that we're falling into territory of Brown Act violation. So I did want to clarify that this evening, that if other board members want to have ongoing conversation, perhaps Director Deppie and I should be relieved of our duties, because we want to make sure that we've got a clear channel going forward. We definitely have had delay. We definitely have, 2 years ago when the project was started, your board generously included the KPD in its evaluation and consideration, and had its architects interview our police chief, Kevin Hart, at the time, and ask about his space concerns and what was needed. And unfortunately, we've been through a lot of transition in that time, and we have been slow about anticipating and sharing our opinion. I think we're ready to move forward, but I think that we want to make sure that our board really understands what all the options are and why we would be spending money to, I should say myself, I want to make sure that I understand why we're spending money on evaluating one particular site over another site.
I want to say two things. One is, with respect to interfacing with the fire board, it should be just from our board. It should just be Director Sheriff-Watt and Director Deppie. No other director should be interfacing with Director Nagel and Vice President Dahmer. I know, Sylvia, your time is limited. Would you like to say anything?
I wanted to ask Judith if she knows anything about the issue of indemnifying, and at what point we should be getting that indemnification.
We haven't had a chance to, or I haven't had a chance to talk to your general counsel before she left on vacation. So Ann's suggestion about indemnification is just based on the representations of Director Sheriff-Watt and Director Natoli tonight. So I can't really speak to that.
Well, the idea would be that when the legal opinion would come in, should someone challenge that opinion, that the fire district would then indemnify and hold the police district harmless in the event of a challenge with the placement of the building in the park, just simply because there has been so much very strong visceral reaction against putting the public safety building, notwithstanding the fact that we need a public safety building. And definitely we want to work with the fire district, but there is a lot of opposition that we've been hearing in our board, and also when I've gone to your meetings, I've been hearing it in your board too. Very strong visceral reaction. Gretchen Gilfin at one meeting said, over her dead body would that building go in the park. So the park is very near and dear to people.
Could I politely disagree? I don't think we have disagreement on this board necessarily about I don't think we're decided about where we think the building should go. We absolutely want to engage with you. We really appreciate your time. And I am happy
to independently bring this item up as soon as I feel that, to our board, as soon as I feel that I can communicate well and clearly why we're taking the action.
It's right now up.
Yes.
I think that, I understand like exactly what Rachel is kind of saying in the sense that for us to move forward, that has to be really clear to us and the and eventually to the public why that is the option. It sounds like Director Sheriff's Walk, Director Deputy, need a little more time with the site process with your board members to then bring this idea back to us. And my hope would be that we could do that, sooner rather than later, because I agree also that the preferred option is to stay together. And it seems to be a matter of clearly understanding the process that went on before, how much of an analysis or what the analysis was in order to make a convincing case to the broad general public about further exploration of the park site.
And I've examined Dawn's decision pathways document, and I think it's very helpful, and I think we are wanting to move this forward. We're mindful of your schedule. We want to be able to present in the fall, early fall, in a very public way so that we can move this forward.
So I'm going to suggest that Directors Duffy and Sheriff Swat continue to meet with Fire Board Director Nagel and Vice President Dahmer on the site analysis and to bring this up. In the meantime, I can ask our council to look into finding bond counsel and getting an estimate of how long an opinion might take, because I don't know what documents even exist that they might need to do a review, and also trying to get a ballpark number of the cost, because we just did our budget and we don't have a lot of extra money at the moment, so that's also a challenge.
So I just want to follow up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I do want to reiterate that there's nothing preventing the carry out need of getting a legal opinion on their own. They don't have to wait for us. I don't know how much money is spent on the project already. I think they're hundreds of thousands, I'm not sure. But it's hard to believe that $5,000 issue here. So it seems like just wanting a legal opinion depends purely what they want right now, that they can get it themselves. It's all public record. They can find a monitor. I mean, we can help them, but if they're really pressed for time, really wanted 60 days, there's nothing preventing them from doing it. And I prefer that we keep discussing this issue like Rochelle has said it, try to work it a little better, not right now.
And I've been told that there are excellent bond attorneys with Myers Nave, who is your legal advisor.
So I don't think that we have any concern that we would be unable to find a bond attorney. So it's been more about the concern that's been raised that it would be inappropriate for the fire district to seek the opinion when the fire district doesn't own the land. So that is what our district has been responding to. And I wanted to respond to you, Director Sheriff Swat. You said that you had a concern about one of my remarks and seemed to imply that there may have been Brown Act violations. I just wanted to let you know, I know that the two of you and Director Debbie are working with Director Domer and Director Nagel, and we learned the outcome of those discussions at our board meeting and in no other way. Director Natoli and I and our general manager had lunch together, and what was said between us, I only shared that in our regular public meeting and not in between. The rest of the informal feedback that I've gotten has been from residents who think they know what your district wants or doesn't want.
I didn't mean in any way to imply that members of your board were inadvertently. It was that we had members of our board, I know, going perhaps discussing issues that could result in shared conversation.
You mean like the president?
No, I mean, like, you, Director Mondavi, going to John Dahmer and discussing the building with him, which could create some difficulties. So,
Well,
that's
he
all
doesn't tell me anything about what you guys are thinking. And I
that's
believe-
wonderful, that's great.
And I
just want to
also
make
talked
sure.
with the other 5 board members just on their topic, so suddenly does the Brown Act mean we're all, like, I respect the Brown Act, I never ask what anyone else's opinion is, I even shut them up the moment it gets anywhere near their talks of your guys' stuff, and I believe the fact that staff can engage with all the directors as long as they do not explicitly tell what's going on or attempt to determine a consensus is well within the rights of the Brown Act.
So maybe what I'll do is hand the original of the letter to your general manager, because I think you are obligated to take public comment.
Thank you. Are there public comments?
May I add one more comment? Just since I'm kind of thinking about when I think about this 5,000, and you talked about the president of the fire board brought up the issue of like maybe propriety, but I also see it in another way too, is that this is sort of a shared project. You know, why is it that we are throwing them to go do it yourself? Like for a while they gave us lease relief on the public safety building in recognition of the fact it was a shared asset and a shared community thing. So why is it that we cannot engage in this? It's $5,000. There are clearly other massive expenditures we've been making which we didn't need to make. So this is a way to show that as a community we are moving forward on together. It's not about what's in the best interest of this board, what the directors on this board feels in their best interest. I remind you, the Constitution says that the citizens of town petition and tell the representatives what to do. So if it's in the best interest of town, we should be thinking.
Well, there's a possibility of retrofitting the current site and some other options that I think are also important to consider. But
It's a matter of timeliness. It's not that we're not willing to consider it. It's the matter of twofold. Again, one is that we need the opinion now in 55 days. And we have a lot of projects on our plate, and we're not sure that we can acquire an opinion. And the other is that there are multiple sites, and we want to know that we're presenting, the director, Debbie, and I, and then perhaps all the members of this board have looked at the site analysis and are comfortable that we're moving forward, spending money towards considering the park, even if that wouldn't be our ultimate decision. So I think it's just a matter of timeliness. It might not be now, it might be in a month, it might be in 2 months.
We spared no time to run through the rest of the policy and procedure manual, and so now you're saying we need to take the slow walk on this pressing issue?
Yes, because I have historical and board knowledge about these issues.
Thank you. My name is Kay Reed. I appreciate President Stein's very clear and compelling presentation here tonight. And I have 2 thoughts. One is under the rubric of penny wise and pound foolish. I think I've heard it said that if they stay in the existing site, then the police services district is an orphan. And good luck with that, right? Trying to find a new site to put singly put a building together, and is that down by St. Jerome's Church, and then what happens to people on Bond Lake who need full police services? Is that really the best approach? I mean, it's a tough spot. I know it's mentioned eminent domain. I'm not sure if anybody wants to do that, and that'll keep people on the Arlington at the time to move out of their houses, so that's probably not a thing. But it strikes me that there should at least be a resolution that says we want to, some official action tonight that doesn't oblige you to do anything except give some credence, give some reassurance to the fire board, who also are responsible for public safety, just like you are, that you're on the team. And that you have a date certain that Sheriff Watts and Director Deputy finish the work and get it done. Get counsel, get some volunteers. I'm sure there's lots of people at KPOA who could do this, to do that analysis. Because it sounds like they're under a deadline to get things done. And they aren't going to be able to wait for us to learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time. We're going to have to find somebody else to chew gum for us. But it just strikes me that the choices are limited. Of course, we'd love to have a big analysis, but you guys named them all off, and you can imagine that the people up on Lake are going to scream if you put the You know, the services building down in Calusa. I mean, people in Lower Kensington are going to be thrilled, but it's tough. The other thing I have, and this will just, you know, like small nuclear device in here, but let me just talk about let's do a thought problem. In 1940, when they started establishing these districts, or if we were back in 1940, and we said, you know, we need police districts, and we need fire services, we need police services, would Kensington have ever, would we now choose to have two separate districts? At the time, there was obviously people on the ground who thought this is a great idea. We'll do fire, we'll do police. And I know there's, 10 years lag, and I wasn't here, and I looked like I might have been, I wasn't here during that time. But to me, I would be totally in support of combining the districts. Then when you do a building, it's our building. There isn't like, I'm using this 1/10 of a room more, and you owe me $1 more. It's us. My dollars that go to the county that come back here are all for public safety, and I don't care who's spending them. I just want to feel safe. So without igniting, a big brouhaha, it could be a really great time to blend the districts, to come together and say, we're all one community, there's not one taxpayer who's represented by one district and not the other. And this building, if the combined districts had then, like we're going to go build a building for both of us, then we wouldn't have a lot of these issues. And so I think it takes bold leadership, imagination, and courage, despite, Gretchen Gilfillan is my beloved neighbor, I hug her every day, but it's going to be what's best for the community and not for any, we all have our individual interests. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well understood, but the current plan is a $12 million building, so it doesn't matter what the districts together could afford. Would that maybe, we will figure that out at some point, but signing on currently, two boards together couldn't fund.
But let's do a show of hands. How many people in this room pay for their homes with cash? Cash. Congratulations, Gutierrez, you did. Great. A very small minority paid for cash. How many of you took out a mortgage? Right? Most of us took out a mortgage. So $12 million. So when we were doing Measure L, which is a $2 million project, that was $35 a year, maybe $45 a year per resident for 20 years. When I saw Ann Forrest at the farmer's market and looking for money for the district, I said, I will give you $50 a year for 20 years. Because that's the way, that's how people pay for these things.
Absolutely.
So,
unfortunately, Measure L failed for $2 million. So we would have to reconsider it. I'm not trying to
in other words, we now need to take this out of cash flow. $12 million would be, it'd be expensive, but we'd have a place where if there's an emergency, which people are really concerned about, then it would be safe and stable, and we'd be good.
Thank you, Feldman. So I want to just address really process, and again, this goes back to a letter that KPOA had sent both district boards about having this process be a little bit more transparent and to the public. We ask that you create a committee that is, a 2x2 with the fire board to sit and have these discussions in a more public forum instead of something like this exactly, but open to the public. So you can really talk about these issues, and I don't disagree with what Kay has said about having a consolidated district. As you know, I've been very public about that in the past. And this is one way to get at those kinds of issues, even if you don't ever end up merging the two districts. But again, it goes down all the way to, I don't disagree with some of the points that you're making as a board and what I'm hearing from the fire board. But it is a shared building. I think everybody in this community would say, we would think that those two departments would be housed together in one public safety building, especially given that there is no other, very limited options because of the land. And this board, as much as the fire board, needs to be concerned about what you're going to build. And I haven't been convinced, and this is more of a discussion for down the road when they start talking about design, why we really need to build a completely new building. That has not even been really well established. I understand the issue about the trace fault in the back of the building, and that limits their ability to work on that piece of property. But I think there's a lot of other questions, and I would really like to see you continue these discussions, but in a much more transparent environment.
I'm just looking, when it comments.
I think we'll take 2 more comments and then we're going to close the discussion on this.
Thank you. I'm coming here with some concern because I hear that the 2 boards understand they have to work together toward the same goals, but there seems to be constant roadblocks thrown up about working together. And I listened today to your March 28th meeting when Larry and Don presented, and there were a lot of statements made by the board and some people from the public that I think need to be addressed, that I think are probably not substantial objections. It's not clear that most people in Kensington are opposed to building the park because no survey has been taken. As been noted, a lot of people have changed their minds in the wake of these recent fires. And I want to say this is not a matter of public opinion. This is a matter of public responsibility. This is the responsibility of elected boards to certify the safety of the public. Just because people don't want something built somewhere doesn't mean that they can just have it built somewhere else. I can assure you that everyone was working in good faith for years to try to find an alternate site. It has been very elusive, and I was opposed to the original site across the street that was planned because I think it was screwed up a ton of things, lots of problems. But the one that's being proposed now is on land that's not being extensively used. It's farther removed from the traffic, and it's better for a lot of reasons to get traffic in and out of the safety building. So there are lots of things that can be mitigated here. CEQA requirements are being shortcut or waived all over the state in the wake of these fires. You can't do the EIR unless you have permission in principle to build, and an earthquake assessment has been carried out. There's questions people raise about why should there even be a bond attorney to be consulted when the park is paid off. I don't know the answer to that, but the police district owns the land. And it's not a problem to have things built on it. I believe that you have an understanding for a demonstration garden to be built on your land, and that was not land that the fire board district owned, but the fire board was going to sponsor that. Why should the limiting factor be whether or not the building is open to the public? Sonoma City Hall is in the center of the plaza. It's not open to the public. It's an administration building. Nobody complains. No one sues. So far, no legal cases have been found that suggest any problem with this arrangement. In the public sector, it's common for one entity to build and own a structure on land that someone else owns. This is not the private sector, okay? Why is the attorney waiting to find, quote, a definitive opinion allowing a use, unquote? Why is it not important that she and others have found no legal precedent against the proposal? You see, laws are not usually made for, they're usually made against things that happen. Why should the fire district accept all indemnity for a PSB in the park when the police board will co-occupy it? Aren't the 2 boards working together? The fire board, as you've seen, does not want to spend $65,000 on a seismic study until, in principle, the police board provides permission to build. Firehouses all over the country, by the way, are built and for centuries have been built within a block of elementary schools. They're regarded as beneficial to public safety in the event of an emergency. Newer ones generally are built farther from the center of town because there's more room for expanded facilities, which is what we need now, and we do need expanded facilities.
Can you start to finish up, please?
I will do.
Thank you.
Children have more to fear from reckless drivers speeding down the curbs than from fire engines. And I don't think there's any evidence of children overwhelmingly being killed by fire engines and ambulances compared to private drivers. So the consequence of this, it costs us $1 million a year in rising costs to put this off. That's $400 per Kensington household. And $1 million a year would buy a lot of bond attorney opinions. I think that no matter how we pay for it, frankly, I don't care if we pay for it. And as a fire board, if that's what it takes, but the opinion has to be rendered and has to be given permission to do this. So that's what I think might happen. I'm not going to advocate, but I'm working on the possibilities. I'm concerned that the police board continues to treat the PSP issue without highest priority. The fire board's going to see no choice but to abandon the joint effort and renovate the present building for fire use only. And as Julie points out, there won't be room for both a modern police and modern facility there, and that means that the police district is gonna have to find new quarters, and that means a new site and a new building. And unfortunately, the fire board legally cannot, as I understand it, contribute to the building of such a building. Whereas if we build a joint building, you're in for free. No one's asking the police board to contribute anything. And Pache told me, I think that it is possible, because we have professional advice that says we can get grants from outside to fund at least part of this. And yes, we can advertise some of this. So I think that this has to be considered really important.
I do need to comment that actually we were asked for a year for what our contribution would be. I was as an ad hoc committee member, and because I couldn't stay, they said that they needed to continue, that you would not be eligible for bank funding without a contribution and a determined contribution from this board. So if there is no funding, if that's a new stance that we do not need to contribute any dollars, that is a dramatic change, and that needs to be communicated.
Well, I might be speaking out of turn on that one,
Okay.
but you're not going to come up with $12 million.
That's, but no, not 12 million, but we were told that it would be a substantial contribution.
Hi, Lynn Walter. I'm the district administrator, and I wanted to address Rochelle's question about building in the existing building. I sat in on the meetings where the police and the fire people met to talk about the needs assessments, and I took copious notes, and I believe I could find those and share those with you. The quick summary is that the changed needs for police departments is vast, and I'm sure that the changed needs for a fire district also are vast. Things like separate changing rooms for females, a place to shower, and the list went on, and it added many, many square feet just for the police department. And I believe it was the same for the fire department. Julie's shaking her head yes. So that's why I believe the current site was deemed not suitable. Is that
Well, I mean, it's still questionable whether we could house both.
A microphone, please.
Yeah.
It's questionable whether both could be housed. But for both to be housed, there simply was not sufficient square footage to meet current demands that come from different agencies. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion that we actually accept what the fire board has recommended here, on the presumption that we are just helping them along the process, at the very least, because we want to remain as a joint community and we're not police and fire. Whether or not we actually build on the park is something that will have to be debated at a later time in greater public thing. But I'm motioning that we accept or move to work with the fire board on this issue.
If you're talking about working with the fire board in a cooperative way, I think we all have stated that we're comfortable working on that. With respect to agreeing right now, if your proposal is agreeing right now to getting a legal opinion, I don't think we're prepared to do that, but I think we've stated enough times individually, we're very much interested in working with the fire district on the public safety building. And our general manager has, we're trying to schedule another lunch with President Stein to move forward. We have Directors Debbie and Sheriff Watt meeting with Director Nagel and Vice President Dahmer on the selection. So I think there's definite adequate cooperation between the two boards, and it's going to continue.
Words are one thing, action is another.
Could, just a point of order, in discussions with the general manager and looking at your agenda and the staff report, it's a discussion regarding a request, but it wasn't agendas for an action item.
All right.
Okay, then.
Right.
I guess no motion.
Right. on that, we're going to continue with our agenda, and I want to go to new business, and that's the auditor's report.
Well, they said that apparently this item was not agendized for action at all.
Well, he also needs a second.
There was no second.
So just for clarification for the public is, if it's not agendized for action item and only a discussion for a request from the Fire Protection District, they can't make the motion, directors can't make an act on the motion, so under the Brown Act.
Oh, thank you. So it does, let me just check this. Yeah, it doesn't say, it just says requests from the thing regarding. It doesn't indicate if it's discussion or action.
Okay, so...
So you're saying this was just set up as a discussion item?
Right.
That the general manager and the board president chose to make it a discussion item only?
True. Right. New business, the financial audit. And our auditor, Stephen Chang, has been here patiently waiting.
Mr. Chang deserves a medal here for hanging on the meeting, and also applause here too, Stephen. I wanted to note that this was presented previously to the Finance Committee, and that there's two motions here, or two action items recommended. The first one is to approve the report, and Stephen can run through the highlights of it for you. And that we're also recommending approval of his fee of $17,800. We paid a portion of it. We had budgeted $16,000, so there's a small additional sum due the Lamarina and Chang firm, mostly for the additional work related to the gas fee requirements, which turned out to be more extensive with the changes to gas fee. And also, Stephen reminded me that at the Finance Committee meeting, the Finance Committee asked for a cash flow analysis, and it was estimated at $1,200 to $1,500 to complete it, but Stephen did complete it for $900. So we would like the board also to approve the additional work he did at the request of the Finance Committee, and that is included in the audit that's before the board this evening. So it's $17,800 plus $900 to Lamarina and Chang. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
I'm going to interrupt really quickly with a motion to extend the meeting until 10:30 because we have this and we have our draft budget. So,
and the consent calendar and board comments and the general manager report.
Right. So is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Director Deputy? Oh, okay, we just lost Director Deputy. Meanwhile, Director Madonna?
Aye.
Director Sherswat?
Yes.
Hi. Do you vote to extend the meeting until 10:30?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that's 4-0 because Sylvia's no longer with us. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Good evening. This is Stephen Chang with Lamarina and Chang CPA, and I'm delighted to be here to present the audit. First, I'd like to thank you, the board, and the management. Let me have the opportunity to work with Kensington Police Protection and Community Service. Here today I'm here to present the 2018 fiscal year 2018 audit. It's a clean audit and I issued a two opinion. One is the auditor report is unmodified, and the other report is audit of financial statement and compliance accordance with the government auditing standards. Both report is unmodified. I don't have any finding, and I could just go through some of the financial highlights. As the general manager mentioned a little bit earlier, the fee for the fiscal year 2018 is higher. There's one major changes for fiscal year 2018 is the gas fee 75 implementation. What is the gas fee 75 implementation is generally what we call OPEB, and it stands for Harder Post-Employment Benefits. And with this new implementation for fiscal year 2018, KPPCSD has approved additional approximately $3.5 million as a liability on the book. As we all know, a couple of years ago, or actually about 2 to 3 fiscal years ago, the district implemented GASB 68, which is pension, and that's approximately another, that was like 3.2. So currently, the district on the balance sheet, the liability is approximately $7.2 million as of June 30th, 2018. For the fiscal year, I'm looking at the profit and loss statement. I just go through some of the financial highlights. For the fiscal year ending 2018, the net change in net asset is negative $73,000, which is a loss for the year, versus approximately $500,000 in last fiscal year 2017. The biggest changes in the total revenue is there is a decrease of about $165,000. One of the major items is the WestNet asset seizure program. That did not repeat in 2018, and we're looking at about $140,000 right there. So the total revenue for the fiscal year ended 2018 is 3.3 versus about 3.4 in the year before. And again, the biggest changes is that one program that did not have any revenue. Total expenses for the year 2018 is approximately $3.3 million versus 2.9 for fiscal year 2017. One of the biggest changes, again, have to do with the retirement, the medical insurance for the retirement trust. We're looking at the current year about $236,000 expenses versus 2017 is only $25,000. PERS, retirement, we're looking at $654,000 expenses versus 2017, $348,000. Right there off the back, you're looking at almost $500,000 increase in expenses compared with last fiscal year. And that is the key reason why it drives the net income for 2017, and now you have approximately $70,000 of deficits for 2018. And that's the major highlight for the profit and loss. And when we're looking into the balance sheet and comparing 2 years, total asset, the 2-year comparison, we're looking at about approximately a little bit over $180,000 decrease. It's pretty consistent. We're looking at about $6 million. The biggest changes, as I pointed out earlier, is the new GASB implementation that brought in $3.2 million of liability as an OPEB obligation. And with that, your net asset, the current year net asset, net equity position is $599,598 versus prior year $3.6 million. And basically, those are the major financial highlights compared with the 2 years.
Thank you. I want to make one note, if I may, that the WestNet, to note, WestNet was a one-time payout for the ending of that program, so that $140,000 would not be repeated every year. It was the conclusion of that program.
So are there any public comments on the audit?
Sorry. I don't quite understand on the microphone. I don't quite understand on the police, on the other expenses, why the West
that is still included, well, maybe Mr. Chang.
I believe the lady is looking at the police department budget, and this is.
Are you looking at you're looking at the proposed budget? That, Celia, will come up, but.
That's the proposed budget.
Yes, that has been changed, that was a housekeeping error, but it would have been correct if Westnet had still been, you'll see the columns, we're going back to 16, 17 in that budget.
Yeah.
And if we were still paying expenses, in 16, 17, it would have been a correct notation. It's not, we've clarified that, and that will be changed. But we're actually talking about the audit right now, and that's the budget. But I was clarifying that Westnet, what Mr. Chang was talking about, is no more, but we need, because the audit is in the past.
Exactly.
We received
I'm emphasizing, right, it's the budget that they proposed, and my report here is actual fiscal year ended 17-18, which we did not have any income. This is fiscal year 17-18, and this is fiscal year 16-17. And you are looking at the 18-19 budget.
Any other comments on the draft audit? The draft audit is subject to approval, so I move that we adopt the draft audit, the financial statements and independent auditor's report for the year ending June 30th, 2018. Is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, well, deputy.
Just seconds. All right. All those in favor, Director Medalli?
Aye.
Okay. Director Sherrill-Swat?
Aye.
Director Debbie? And I will also vote yes, so that's 4-0 to approve. Okay, thank you.
5, is it? Oh,
Sylvia's
Yes, Director Messiah will be at 9:30 this evening.
Okay, then we have the last item of, thank you very much, I appreciate all the
Thank you.
effort.
Thank you.
The General Manager, you asked for us to approve a payment.
That's correct, $17,800 plus an additional $900.
I'm sorry, so it's 1,700 plus,
No, $17,800 to La Marina and Chang CPA for completion of the audit, and an additional $900 in order to fund the, what sheet? Cash flow sheet that was
requested by the Finance Committee. So
Yes.
that's a total of 18,000.
We previously,
Someone, point of order is about rejections, I believe, by parliamentary rules.
we had approved something previously.
Sorry, I just realized that the board had approved $16,000 in its budget, so you're not approving an additional $17,000, and I think it's
1,800
plus
plus
the
900.
Yes, thank you.
So it's 2,700 that you're really
It's
approving.
an additional 27.
Okay, so I'll move to approve a payment of an additional 2,700 to La Marina and Chang to do the financial audit plus the extra money for the cash flow analysis.
I'll second.
Second that.
Okay. All right, Director Madavi?
Aye.
Director Debbie? Director Sherrill-Swat?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So again, that's a 4-0 vote for that additional money. And thank you for reminding me to do that. All right. Now we have the draft budget. General Manager Constantouris, would you like to introduce the draft budget?
The budget that's before you is the same document that was presented a few days ago to the Finance Committee. And each individuals that were on this budget were Deborah Russell and Rosa Noni, who were here to answer any questions on the budget. There is some fine tuning on this document, but the major changes largely are in the personnel department, where the police department is being projected at nearly full staffing for the next fiscal year. We're close to doing some current backgrounding, and we're hopeful the candidates will be successful. And we're also bringing in a temporary police chief starting in July. So those additional positions are funded in this budget. And then the other part is we're implementing the administrative organization that was approved a few months ago by the board of directors. And there's a transition element in this budget for those positions.
Right, and I think there was also a change in the Finance Committee to moving some money from the projected budget for next year, but for hazardous waste removal for the community center project, which we could fund with current monies, and so that liberated some extra money that we are putting towards work in the park to do some additional tree trimming as needed and the pruning.
That's correct. It's, those funds are moved from the next fiscal year to the current fiscal year, where that work is moved, and freed some funds that are available, became available for tree pruning and some vegetation management. We're also looking to try to include some funds for an evaluation of the annex building. And we haven't quite worked those details out, but we're hopeful to include that item also in the budget.
May I note several changes that we made? This document appeared before the Finance Committee on Tuesday. I'll just quickly note some of the changes that we made. It will go back to the Finance Committee with comments from this board for June 4th, and then hopefully, it's my understanding that it will reappear June 13th.
That's
for
correct.
final approval. Additional pages, there are 3 that will be added. One will be, you'll have a projected 18-19 column for this fiscal year using actual figures projected through the end of the year. We'll do estimated actual. That will be its own sheet. We will also have, in the 5-year forecast page, we'll have an estimated actual column. And if you'll note, page 25 will get moved, and there will be, you'll see on 23 and 24 that there are breakdowns of our budget, of the proposed budget for the police and parks and recreation, but you're missing the administration budget and codes, and that will be included in the next draft. On page 9, the Measure G supplemental tax, you will see that that issue has not come before this board yet. It was estimated out at 3%. Then on page 12, the goal, one of the goals, additional officer training has been added. On page 13, we will remove the WestNet notation. And we'll leave Cal ID, that will stay. On page 15, I'm sorry, I'm going quickly. Page 15, you'll see there it says 4 lines up, the bottom, Kensington Park operation and maintenance. That budget has been increased to $94,600. That was a move of some funds that were removed from hazardous waste, as President Natoli had stated. And then the line below that says park construction, that line will be changed to tennis courts for $10,000. And the waste recycle, which is on page 17 column, which is third from the bottom, excuse me, that will be changed to reflect $30,000 plus reduction because of the way those expenses will be budgeted probably in this fiscal year, about $30,000.
May I ask why the finance committee didn't actually produce us the change with all these ads incorporated, so it wasn't this oral tracking game?
Because the finance committee only met on Tuesday. And actually, what we're trying to do and move things up in the year, I think everyone would appreciate that, so that we're not rushed at the last minute. And so we're trying to get the draft budget done earlier as the fiscal year ends than we have in the past. But it's still time consuming, and I very much appreciate the time that General Manager Constantouris and Debbie Russell and Bill Zanoni spent on last week and the weekend. It was considerable effort to even get this document out, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you, yeah, and thank you for staying late.
And one more change on page 19, and I mentioned this earlier. On page 19, the figure at the bottom of 370,000 should instead be $133,489.
I had some questions. So I was at the finance committee meeting, just like as an observer, which I'm allowed to do. The general manager mentioned something about having to cut things to balance the budget. Would he be willing to go into more detail about what exactly he had done to get this budget this year?
Well, we did cut the $40,000 for park maintenance, which has now been added back in. Partially, that's correct. And the $10,000 for the annex building. And then the other things I think we were able to add back in, except for a police vehicle. But and we really don't have a good system for allocating funding police vehicles in the future, setting the funds aside. And it's becoming a greater issue where we keep deferring it. And it's something we probably want to come back to the board with some plan or some vehicle replacement, at least for the forthcoming year. Outside the budget, probably finance through reserve funds, but we have to check our reserve funds. But that is something we need to do, is set up a funding mechanism to replace all the police vehicles in the future.
Are you aware of the current age of most of our vehicles and how much miles they've clocked?
Yep.
And so this board has sort of let that
No, actually, we've talked about it, and I assume, unfortunately, we've said that we wanted a capital account with funding half a vehicle every year, and I voted for such an issue. So if somehow I know we then liquidated the capital accounts. We got rid of the $100,000. We had $100,000 marked in its own account for vehicles. We moved that back into the general fund because it wasn't being used. The vehicle had been purchased, but somehow that had come out of our general account and not, if I'm understanding, not our standalone capital account. So the will has been there. Somehow communication has not worked. So we need to do that, absolutely.
And then my other questions about this administrative, like salaries and benefits. So the whole point of this administrative reshuffle was supposed to save us money in the long run. Yet when I'm looking at the fiscal forecast, it seems the amount of money we spent this year on administrative staff and salaries, including any of the overages and stuff, is actually a lot lower than all the projected amounts that it's going to cost us for this new structure. Even though that the whole point of this study was a promise that the costs would go down. Could you explain why they're still going up in contrast to what the board was sort of promised when they all took that vote?
Well, you're not entirely accurate in those comments, but this is a transition year, first of all, so there's going to be some overlap of the positions. The part of the savings are improved operations and improved procedures that have not yet been implemented. I think the true savings will be realized over a couple of years. It isn't immediate, but also there will be staff to provide work that isn't currently being completed because there's insufficient staff. The board, for example, is assisting in a number of staff projects such as the agenda. And so that will transfer to the staff because there'll be staff to be able to do that.
Is the district administrator assisting with the agenda?
Not at this time.
So, in other words, you're not using your staff to do that. My other question is, I guess I'm talking about the forecast. The forecast just increases. It doesn't seem to go down. That's in 5 years. So how many years out is this projection before we start saving money? Because of those 5 years, the three of them, the 22, 23, 24, are all negative.
The 5-year projection is a working document for planning purposes. It isn't. There's a lot of guesstimates related to the future. Obviously, we don't know what will happen, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So it is a planning document. It should be used as a planning document. The board only has the authority to approve the budget for 1 year. That's not a budget for the future years. It's simply a tool to use for planning purposes.
Yeah, I know.
And they use conservative estimates when they're going forward.
The estimates are very conservative, and I think that's a fair way of doing it. And I think we have to update it every year. We feel it's as realistic as possible on a conservative basis.
And as you'll remember from the Finance Committee meeting, the catastrophic change for us is the change in CalPERS assessment. We're owing more and more at ever-increasing rates to OPEB, and that's unfortunately something that's happening for all probably municipalities and special districts in California. And so we're seeing huge increases, $100,000 increases, and we hope that our budget will be able to keep up with that. We'll have to do the ever-increasing cuts. We'll have to see what we can do.
I should also add that this is only the second year that the 5-year forecast has been presented. I don't believe there has ever been another one in previous years.
There has been. That's why
I haven't seen it.
They actually have existed. My last question was how, because you've gone over administrative staff, what about the police specialist position? Because you said that your reshuffle also included changes to that. Does that reflect in the budget?
It is. I think the intent for that position is that it would move into the police department and would become a police department position instead of, I think it's most of the time, 2/3 of the time is in police. Now it would become completely a police position. And it would be up to the chief to utilize that position as the chief felt would be most beneficial to the department.
And I guess I don't have it here, but my last question was about staff assignments. Like when you add in all these new positions, you cut your time down to the bare minimum. I believe it was like 0.35. So what would the general manager be accomplishing with that much time?
Well, the general manager would be providing oversight and supervision to the staff. I think that's also has to be approved by the board. That's a guesstimate also. I mean, in an ideal world, the staff would be doing the day-to-day work and the manager would be providing the oversight and the direction. It presumes of finding staff that can do that work and those projects and implementing the staff clearly.
How do you do oversight if you're only here about 1/3 of the time? Because oversight, like for example, the police, they were saying that the sergeants always here or on call to do oversight. Otherwise, it's not really oversight. So how is it the general manager is providing oversight to all these new positions if he's not really here? And one of the complaints that supposedly is made is that staff is operating without oversight.
The police department is a different operation.
It's a safety issue.
Correct. It's a safety issue that another officer should be present in case of an emergency. So there isn't a parallel comparison. And the staff that you'd like to hire should be able to supervise themselves. We want self-supervised and self-directed individuals that just would need some direction and some guidance.
That would be fired at will and apparently have no job security. Let me ask you, people who are that motivated, that driven, do they really go for at-will positions?
Please be respectful.
I am. I'm asking, he has so much experience about hiring. I would like to know this.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, are there any public comments on the draft budget?
Hi, Linda Lipscomb here. I wasn't able to capture the many changes that you gave orally, so I'm shooting in the dark here. But on the basis of what's written here, I have a couple of questions. How did our insurance double? The allocation for insurance from 2018 is, and I'm assuming this is CSDA?
SDRMA. SDRMA.
SDRMA.
I think that's Debbie.
The district manager actually wants to offices is the.
I'm on my question right now.
No, I'm saying
Excuse me.
you know that.
I can answer.
Yeah, she can answer.
Madam President, point of order, just, I mean, is.
I think that's a question for Debbie. I'd like Debbie
Staff
to
is,
answer that.
I mean, I don't want to utilize anyone who's not here working with staff.
Yeah, so Debbie should answer that question. Like Lynn is here as a resident,
And we don't want to
and it's
utilize
unfair to
them.
her to use it to call.
I'm happy to donate my time this
It-
evening, if that's okay.
It's really a question for Debbie. I'd like
All
Debbie
right.
to answer,
Thank
unless
you very
Debbie's
much.
unable to answer.
You know, this doesn't fly with me, that she can't answer the question, she knows the answer just because, this is not.
Debbie knows the answer to the question. Debbie
Thanks, Debbie.
Debbie is our advisor.
It's rude, it's rude.
The liability insurance is going up, the rate is going up 5%, and because we've had too many claims, we now are liable for $25,000 per claim in addition to that. So we budgeted one claim. If it's more, that's an extra $25,000.
You mean a deductible?
Right.
Okay, so formerly, what was our deductible?
Before we had zero.
We had a zero
So now
deductible.
the
Now we have
premium
20.
went up 5% plus the deductible per
Okay,
claim.
that answers that. Thanks, Debbie.
And the second thing I wondered is, how did we get a jump from $16,500 to $81,000 for waste and recycle? $81,000?
So what was included, that is one of the changes that was made. One of the things that was included in the $81,000 is $30,000 for hazardous waste removal for the community center. We are able to tap into those franchise fees that we've been saving and only can use for that kind of work. But that work seems like it's going to happen this fiscal year. So that was one of the changes that's mentioned. That's actually going to drop to $51,000. And the $30,000 was moved to the pruning and poison oak removal.
But in answer to your question, it refers to the franchise fees that Bayview collects, sends to us, and we have to send a portion of that to the county.
Okay, so
Well, that's not what they said. Correct. So it is being used out of that money.
But the 51,000, Debbie, what is that used for?
Let me tell you. My glasses.
It's because it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
It's a whole person.
It was a contract, can I jump with Debbie? It was, I have it noted as that we were perhaps doing a survey on the use of certain toter garbage cans at $6,000.
Correct.
And contract review of the Bayview contract at $45,000, should we choose to do that.
Yes, I have it listed as contract review / RFP at $45,000. And then the toters, a survey regarding toter sizes at $6,000.
An RFP to review the Bayview contract at $45,000?
I'm telling you what's in there.
Okay. No, we did that ourselves. I mean, that's outrageous.
Yeah, was that the thing with Chuck Toombs and?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it was that.
No, I think Glenn Welch and I, we've all done it at different times. I find that outrageous. Anyway, those are my two that I picked up right away. We're going to get this again, aren't we?
Yes. Oh, yeah. this
With
is
those
correct.
changes and all?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the changes that Rochelle had mentioned, additional formatting and additional pages.
Okay. Looks like we slow walked a lot of hiring and got it into the community center funds in the past. By the way, the 3 columns on,
Microphone.
I'm sorry.
The 3 columns which quote in part 2016, 2016 column just doesn't ring true to me. a lot of the figures appear to be missing
What
there.
page, please?
It's various pages,
Oh,
where there are comparisons of multiple years. See if I can point one out right away. Not that important because this isn't the final. But it just didn't ring true to me at all. Okay, we've got page 17, for instance. You got salaries, district administration, salaries and benefits. Salaries, $5,000. You paid more in salaries than $5,000 and change in 2016. Right, I'm just saying it doesn't ring true to me, the whole thing. And then basically what you have is you got a big jump. In 2018, your aggregate is 541 and change, and you're going up to almost $714,000. That is a major jump. So I'll be looking forward to your filling in blanks. Thank you.
And these numbers should be vetted again, but I can see increases from fiscal year 18-19 to 19-20 that there's considerable increases there.
Okay, I'm going to just address the 5,900. Those numbers are actual numbers at the time, how we were recording them. We didn't have a separate general manager, so that's part of what's in there in the modern years, but was not in there in that year. And previously, the district administrator's time actually was ending up in the police. We have changed that, deciding that it's truly a district expense, but it was being recorded there. So what you have in that little bit is just a portion of, I think Andrea's time, and maybe Lynn's time, but it's a small portion, and so now we just classify it differently. So those numbers were true at the time, and the rest of the salary is sitting in police.
Linda, did you hear that?
I did.
Okay.
Sounds like an allocation change to what column you were putting things.
It was like how we broke out the legal for the police. It used to
Right.
all sit, it used to all sit in legal district, and then for management decisions, it seemed better to keep it in the right classification. But if you track legal, if you go back to the past, legal was all in district. Now there's a portion in police that's related to those activities, so it's a similar situation.
Similar, okay, thank you.
I'm going to move to extend the meeting to 15 more minutes to 10:45. Is there a second?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
Aye.
Director Debbie?
Yes.
Okay, Director Sharaswat?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes, so it's 4-0. Thank you.
Yes, hi, Gail Feldman again. So I did not have a chance to review this until just while I was sitting here, so I just have some general comments, but a couple of things that caught my eye and was running through your financials. So, but first, as a sort of general statement about overall looking at the budget for this year and then your forecast. And yes, forecasts are planning tools, but you use them to make priority choices in earlier years so that you know how those will impact you out in the future. And of course, you're always budgeting to what you know you have as revenue and what you can count on as revenue. And so clearly your forecast is showing you going into the ready and in future years, which is based probably on your revenues look pretty much like realistic here, because even with the housing prices and the assessed values going up significantly on the houses at turnover, nonetheless, our revenues aren't going up sufficiently enough for the kinds of expenditures that you are anticipating. And so really that's my real concern. And I know it's a balancing act because there's lots of things that you want to do, as well as what your consultants are telling you should do. But I don't see how you can afford this package right now. And plus do all this capital development work that you want to do. So I'm a little bit disappointed, even though I know that you've gone through the whole process with Bob Geese and the whole administration. I just don't see it being realistic, even with Tony cutting down his time. I don't even actually believe you're at a point where maybe Tony wants to cut down his time, but I don't know that you're ready for that yet. So, I don't know. I wouldn't be bringing on that many new staff, and this is not like because, I'm taking a position on, whoever works for you or whatever, but I just really think that financially, you don't want to make that commitment yet. And so you might want to rethink those positions and how you're going to get that work done, because I don't think you can afford it. Secondly, your forecast, I think there's some stuff missing in there. The one thing that I saw, Tony, is that I think you're not having janitorial service, as much janitorial cost this year because of the construction, so you're not using the building, but then you didn't put it back in for the future years. Because I assume you're going to have a custodian or full-time, or whatever the 20,000 is, so that probably needs to go back into your forecast. And I didn't look at all the other numbers, but they look kind of like this kind of straight line analysis. But again, you haven't even negotiated your MOUs, as you said. The PERS costs are going to go up. I noticed your communication costs for next year are going pretty drastically higher than they were prior years. So I don't know if that wasn't explained. But again,
That is our dedicated fiber optic line. It's costing, to keep the same phone number.
So,
And communication to Albany.
yeah, here as Albany. So again, it's not just personnel, it's undertaking project. And I hear you say, oh, we're going to do something with the annex. I'm like, well, where are you getting that money from? It's unrealistic for this district to spend that kind of money, and I think you just need to pull back. And as much as, yes, you want to do all those things, it's just not realistic. And, at this point, you're heading for another tax increase, and maybe at some point it's really going to be needed, but you have to really prioritize, because people aren't going to go for it, and it's not fair either, especially, if it feels like you're just like spending here and there, and there's really no solid reason for it. So anyway, I just, would like you to take another look at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? So if not, I want to thank Debbie and Bill and General Manager of Tourist, because I know you put in Herculean effort, and I appreciate it very much. I guess we'll see you on June 4th. Thank you very much. When we go back to the beginning of the agenda and go back to any other public comments on... Yes, Linda?
Oh, I'm sorry. General public comment
Yeah.
from the beginning?
Yeah, not on the agenda.
Correct. I wish I'd been able to say this at the beginning, because it's always, sorry for all the noise. It's always a pleasure to say congratulations to people in our community. And I took a look, I have a copy for a few people. I made 5 copies or so. We had some very good press releases out of our police department. Thank you, Chief. And Detective Martinez, Officer Foley, Officer Fodor, Sergeant Barrow have been working, and there were a number of arrests in the past month, and people say it's pretty quiet here in Kensington. Well, they're busy circling and making arrests. There are 3 separate press releases. As I say, I have a copy here, and I'd like to thank you for a job well done. So if anybody wants them, I have them.
Thank you. And we might consider putting those out on Nixle so that the community has notice of them. Thank you, Linda. Go for it.
You have the floor.
Not on the agenda, but just since I'm here, I would like to request that the ad hoc committee report be put back somewhere on your website. I couldn't find it.
Did you search for it?
I did, so if it is available, then please just get back to me.
Sometimes I can't find something, but if I search for it. But Chris, do you know, is the ad hoc?
Can you repeat the question?
Gail is asking for the ad hoc report on the website.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's on the website.
She couldn't find it.
I'll take it off
The
here.
best thing to do
Go ahead.
is just, if you're just searching ad hoc, you find it. First thing that comes up is ad hoc committee documents. It's a page. You click on that, and that page has final process framework and the ad hoc committee final report.
Maybe you could send me the link. That would be good.
All right, thank you. All right, so moving on, board and staff comments. General Manager, Council
Yes, I just updated several items. The CLETS report, all the facts that they needed have been gathered, and I did have some questions about the extent of the report, and they're looking into that. I think they want to go back a little. I'm asking that they go back a little further in their investigation, just so that all the citizens that expressed concerns, that their questions are addressed. On the chief of police, we had started off with 5 candidates, and 3 are still in the process. We haven't made a selection yet, but hopefully we'll be making a selection in the near future, and that's despite the really low market pay for the chief of police position. We are still getting some good quality candidates. I hope they stick through it though to the very end. And sometimes, they participate in an interview, but then at the end they don't accept the position. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that. And the Matrix RFP for the contracting options is being drafted currently, but it will come back to the board for approval prior to being distributed to these neighboring agencies. And as President Stein of the Fire Board indicated, that President Natoli and I had a meeting and talking among just general issues, and did mention the public safety building and the site analysis that might be the next step, since there are so many people who keep proposing various sites as options. And then of course there's a possibility of an environmental impact report, which could take a year just to move through once that site is selected. And then I had a recommendation on approaching potential grants that I'm recommending that we do not pursue grants that are complicated and where they have manuals and other procedures in order to apply for them. The right way to approach grants is you should list all the grants that are available and then select the grants that you want to apply for. Not apply for those as they come in through the email and then say, well, let's apply for this one, let's apply for that one. It should be an entire process. And that would require really a professional who knows grants and could evaluate them and could recommend to the board. And there are people like that, but it is not inexpensive, and the board can have an option to look at that. I don't think we have the expertise in staff or in the community. The grants are, we try to use citizen volunteers the best way we can, but they do have many grants, or just all of them have accounting regulations, they have oversight conditions, they have regular audit reporting. And those organizations that do have successful grant programs usually hire an accountant or a business professional to manage the entire process, start to finish. Now, I am saying, though, that if the board directs us that the district apply for a specific grant, we will, of course, do what the board directs. But this is just kind of a general policy statement approach, rather than randomly applying for grants, we can have an organized approach in the future. Thank you.
I had a question. Given grants are this hard, could you comment on the fact that the police officers themselves brought in $150,000 last fiscal year?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The police officers themselves brought in $150,000 worth of COPS grants in last fiscal year. Could you comment on that, since you're saying it's such a complicated task that we need a professional to do it?
The COPS grants, again, a completely different process. almost automatically given to every agency, a certain sum that's thought of there isn't, this is not the same kind of grant. These grants, the grants that I'm talking about, I'll tell you that I was involved with the EDA grants, and the economic development grants when they first came out, and one of the requirements I was mentioning is that they needed a sign that said this facility was funded by an EDA grant, and the sign had to meet certain specific specifications. Both the colors that were included and the size of the lettering and the size of the sign itself. That doesn't apply to COPS grants. That's a misunderstanding. They call it a grant, but it's more of an allocation of the grant.
Do you know how...
And then, by the way, that's given automatic, pretty much automatically. I don't think the police officers got the
May I
grants.
ask you a question? Do you know how many grants a normal faculty advisor in the university will apply to? Like, these are very complicated writing, like I believe it's 12 pages of detailed, incredibly complicated science, plus multiple pages of administrative support, and they're only maybe getting $3 million out of it. Do you know how many a professor might apply to in a year?
Again, that's not applicable to local government. Academic grants are a completely different category.
But they're still complicated grants. I write them. I work with the
They're called grants, but it's a completely different process than for local government.
Mayor? I just wanted to note very quickly, unfortunately, the passing of two valuable community volunteers, Walt Gilflin, a longtime KMAC appointee, passed away, husband of Gretchen Gilflin, unfortunately, who was a valuable committee member and community volunteer, both of them, and Erwin Horowitz, who has guided many young men through the Eagle Scout process for Mount Silverado, Mount Silverado, Diablo Silverado, it's getting late, Council. So we express our condolences to their spouses and families and thank them for their long service.
Okay. Director Madavi, do you have any comments?
No, well, I just wanted to comment that my PRA to Albany, which took a lot longer than I thought it would, actually matured, and the emails are now available to the district. I provided them to the district, and I just wanted to, let me find it. One of them was actually kind of concerning to me. Where is it? There's so many papers here. Please, thank you. Yeah, so one of them that was actually quite concerning to me was one of them which Albany had been talking about when Matrix sent them the 6-minute and 7-minute travel time data and just asking about it. And Albany's response was not the greatest thing I've ever seen. In fact, in response to getting that data, the police chief at the time said, at the end of going through how he was saying that this data you're using can't actually be used for what. So he said our CAD's RIM system is not currently configured to automatically generate accurate response time reports. Consequently, you should not rely on this data to calculate total call time for service response time. Among that, he sort of ends up saying, in summation, the data you are relying on for your study is fallacious, your source is apparently misidentified, and Chief Hall has been provided with information necessary to compile accurate data for your use. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of this, right?
Yes, Matrix acknowledge that.
That their data essentially does not, the CAD RIMs that Albany's not set up to provide them that data.
Matrix acknowledge that.
Yet that's what's in their final report, and they don't have any caveat to that fact.
They acknowledge that at meetings. Do you have any other comments?
I think the points on the final report is concerning enough.
Director Debbie, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. Chief Hull?
No.
Okay. With that, I'm going to move, well, I have one quick item, which was at our last meeting, a resident complained about dogs without being on leash in the park. And police have appreciated that because now they have an opportunity to enforce the dog leash law that is a county ordinance. And Officer Martinez is going to be ordering some additional signs because there were no signs by the tennis courts, and apparently people used the excuse of not seeing the sign as a reason why they thought that area was an appropriate area for dogs without leash. So that matter has been addressed, and I very much appreciate the police department's quick response on that to the residents' request. We'll move to the consent calendar, and there's a number of minutes. Does anyone want to pull anything?
I would like to just ask one question to the board in general that's been bothering me. And so, when you talk...
Is it concerning the consent
Yes, it's
calendar?
concerning the consent calendar. I stay on topic. I'm sort of curious, like you say it's all fine and dandy that the board members are writing the minutes, but I was wondering, would this board's directors be, or anyone in the audience for that matter, be comfortable if it was like, say, former directors Gillette, Toombs, or Lipscomb, who were editing the minutes, editorializing within them, and then whole-scale omitting parts of the discussion simply because it became awkward for them to immortalize in the minutes? Would you guys be comfortable with that?
If you have any specific comments on the minutes, we will take them. Any comments?
I actually, well, and that's to my point. So, for example, I was the March 14th, I'm not going to pull that because there's no point, but I sort of have a sense that I don't think you read any of my requests because there's still the monetary typo of writing 18000, 3 zeros, and there should have only been 2 zeros, and I explicitly had told you about that typo, but in these minutes it's still there.
Right, I will correct that.
Only that? Or would you honor any of my other requests or concerns that were also in there?
We haven't had these minutes for approval. I'd like to pull item F, please,
Okay.
from the consent calendar.
Okay.
And then regarding E, item E, page 3, there's a slight correction. Excuse me. Take a moment to find that.
Actually, point of order, do you think it is fair for us at this late hour to have to process so many minutes in one go? Like, you had all this policy stuff going on, then suddenly you flood the consent calendar with multiple months worth of minutes, and now we're all expected to discuss this at this late hour, or have, beyond going through the draft policy sections, have to also have gone through all these minutes. Is that fair?
What page?
Page 3.
Of the March 14th?
Yes,
May I get an answer?
Yes, we're completing board work this evening.
So in other words,
I think it's fair we voted, and you voted to extend the meeting time until this time. If you don't want to extend the meeting time beyond 10:45, that is absolutely within your purview, and the meeting will end. It needs to be unanimous at this point, as we only have 4 board members present. So should you not wish to continue, please feel free to vote that way.
I move to table the minutes for a future board meeting when we're fresher.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, we're going to be going on.
Page 3, yes. It's the second paragraph from the bottom. It just after Meryl Natchez asked, and it should say for a discussion on hiring a chief of police. That's my correction to those.
Okay, I can correct that.
Um,
Director Badawi, you mentioned in this minutes that there's a typo. Oh, I see it. Thank you.
I had mentioned that multiple months, I think at least 2 months ago, just for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else notice anything wrong with any of the other minutes, or is it just me?
I pulled item F, and I'm going to make a motion that we approve the consent calendar items A through E, G, and H, with the changes suggested.
Actually, I'd like to do G and H.
Just a moment, please. You
There's a
can,
motion on the floor.
with the addition of the meeting place to all of these items. So each,
Oh, with the meeting.
with the meeting, the address of the meeting place.
Yeah, okay. I will second that motion.
So,
And then I'm going to public comments.
Public comments.
There are 3 kinds, I like to call the meeting minutes three kinds of problems with the whole set. One is just simple typos, those are easy to fix. The second is omissions of words that make sentences incomplete or nonsensical. And a third is an omission of information or an omission of context that would make statements confused or incoherent and likely misrepresented. So I'm not going to bother with the first class of typos. I'm not going to bother with the second type, but I do want to talk about the third. By the way, I edited all of these, and I will read these if you would like to take them and incorporate these comments into your next. But I'd also say that their mission, information, or content is important in a certain respect. On March 28th, on the last page, the video recording of the meeting shows that over its last 45 minutes, Larry Nagel and Don Dahmer gave a presentation on the status of the public safety building, and there was a long and constructive discussion with the board and the public, but this is not mentioned in the minutes at all. I don't think I have to go through the content because a lot of it has been rehashed tonight. So the last item stated on that date is the approval of the motion to extend the meeting from 10:15 to 10:30, and there was a later motion to extend at 10:45, but it's not clear why there's no further account of the meeting after that first extension. It's not clear why the presentation by the Fire Department Building Committee and discussion on this was not even mentioned, let alone described, when it was actually a quarter of the time of the meeting.
And those have been pulled from the consent calendar.
They have been pulled by
By-
Michelle already asked this, so.
They were not part of my motion.
Okay, so I'm asking that those be added. Another problem on this comes from several, I think it's another systemic problem. On April 11th, the first page board comments, the minutes say that, quote, Director Mandavi said he will have elucidating comments on police data for the next meeting, unquote. What he actually said was that he had been, quote, following up on matrix numbers and historical context that he thought the board would find elucidating, unquote. As reported, the statement is really not very coherent. Page 2, under the General Manager Board comments, the minutes say that, quote, Director Mandavi noted that this government code provides that there are only 5 special districts with authority to provide police services, unquote. What he actually said is that this code pertains to only 5 places in the state and says that police services are an essential assigned duty of this district. Kensington is one of the 5. They're able to operate as cities and counties do with respect to being able to staff their own police force. As reported in the minutes, the statement doesn't have any relevance to the district, when in fact it does. You may agree with it if it was out of place there, but it does have relevance to the district. And finally, on the middle of page 4, the minutes say that Director Mandavi, quote, noted that he prepared a graph with 6 years of data and went on a ride with police, unquote. This is incomplete and inaccurate. He gave a long and detailed report of how he went through all the district police reports over 8 years of data and noted that police activities comprise much more than calls for service, which are about 7 and 8 per day. They extend to recording data, other activities, but total more like 15 or 16 activities today. That doesn't account for what he says are the deterrents of crime that their presence provides. He said that there's no evidence that contracting out police service saves any money. He was quoting the ad hoc committee and other sources. He provided metrics that show that contracting out, depending on how it's measured, costs the same or more. Finally, he did not say that he wanted to provide a police car. He said that he spent time with our police officers asking about some of their equipment and noted how outdated some of the equipment in their vehicles is. As reported, the account of the minutes is dismissive and inaccurate. I am not talking about any board member's behavior or conduct, although there's plenty of blame to go around, but minutes should be accurate. They are part of the legal record of the district. And finally, I ask you, please don't reduce the board minutes to action items, because so many residents have difficulty attending, they're used to narrative meetings, and they don't have time to concentrate on a 3-hour recording of the meeting. And until recently, we had accurate and partial minutes, and hardly anyone complained. So I will end these comments and make a copy for these who like it.
Okay, we have 4 minutes left. I'm going to call for a vote of whether to, Michelle, could you please repeat the motion? Yes.
Just one more. I made a motion to accept items A through E, G and H, with the addition of the meeting place to all minutes and any additions made here tonight for page 3 and any other addendums made by directors.
I'm going to, just because we have, if you can do this in about a minute.
I can do it in 30 seconds. Who's writing the minutes?
I've written them.
Oh, my word. I mean, that is totally unfair to you. We used to have extremely good minutes written by the district administrator. I'd like to suggest just go back to it. Thank you. Thanks for those efforts. That's huge.
Hello, Andrew Gutierrez here. I find it the height of hypocrisy that people should be complaining about minutes when in the past, and I've been attending these meetings for about 25 years, that the minutes sometimes were almost non-existent. The board is doing a great job of moving things forward, and the minutes is just one part of it. You have the video, which before we didn't have. We have a microphone that actually works, whereas before we didn't have. And so an awful lot of progress is being made. And to complain about periods, sentences, transcribing, when you have that record, is hypocrisy. Thank you.
I just want to note, our retention ordinance is minutes. Video and audio are destroyed after 5
Okay, I'm
years.
going to call for a vote. Director Madavi?
No.
Okay. Director Shirazwat?
Yes.
Director Deppie? Okay. And I will vote yes. So the motion passes. I'm going to move to adjourn. Is there a second?
A second?
Director Madavi?
I said, did I have a copy of the minutes? Something? Oh, well, whatever. I'll send you an email and I'll make it on the record. We can.
The minutes are in the agenda.
Well, my agenda's kind of gotten a bit
It's
flustered.
on our website at kppcsd.org. Under today's, there'll be an individual document under today's agenda. I mean,
I'm
under
saying a
today's.
physical copy of the minutes if someone has.
Oh,
Well,
probably in the back
copies,
room,
there were
yeah.
copies in the back. Okay, Director Deppie, the motion, there's a motion to adjourn. Director Madavi?
Aye.